Yeah, we're just waiting for people to come in. And I was going to say that while we're waiting for people to come in, I want to show something in FrameReady before we get started. And that is that every now and then people will tell us that, this little message comes up. And this message comes up when you have the button marked on FrameReady to let you know if you haven't made a backup within 24 hours. And I see this on so many screens, and I don't think that people realize that all you need to do is click on that red button. And when you click on it, it takes you to the screen instantly where you can click the Backup Now button, and it will make the backup for you. And I'm not going to do it right now, but that's how easy it is. So I just wanted to share that information with you before we got started.
And I think the important thing is that it is in bold and red, because it is really important to do those backups.
Welcome to our webinar on setting up the molding and matboard pricing in FrameReady. I'm going to start with the price codes file. So we're going to go right into our FrameReady software program. This is mentioned on a previous video, but I just wanted to highlight it. If you're receiving your FrameReady program and you realize that the vendors you need aren't in there, go to the Update Vendor Pricing button. You will see the list of vendors that are currently in your FrameReady software program on the left-hand side. If there are any you don't need, click on the Remove button. If there are any that you need to add, click on the tabs at the top for your selected country so that you can add those vendors in. If you're in the Canadian market, make sure that you also add in the vendor codes. These are the charts from all of the suppliers that have the retail prices on them. So if you decide to price that way, you want to have that in there. That is on one of our first videos. Now, one of the first handouts that I want to show you is the handout that talks about the calculations for measuring the prices, the measurements and the pricing in FrameReady. So this is the handout of how we've calculated out all the prices and the dimensions. So the first one has to do with the molding. It's pretty straightforward. The same thing with the glass, and you can take a look at the handout, the other ways for pricing. The one that's really unusual is this one down here at the bottom where it says United Inch Area. And this is a formula that was designed by Vivian Kistler and Bob Mayfield. It's in a book. I know people have Googled this to find out what is United Inch Area. That is the calculation for it down at the bottom, which is fairly simple. For the United Inch Area, we're going to take the United Inch, divide it by 2, and then minimize it over on the side then for now. And I want to take a look at the next part. We're going to go right into Matboard pricing. We're going to be working in the price codes file. We're going to take a look at the red corner sample with the blue $ to go directly to pricing. Pink is for pricing. When you click on the screen, you have a pink background on your screen. The other handout that we have in there is the one on Matboard. We're going to go through the different types of pricing structures that we have available. And we have a video called Matboard Pricing that you can watch that also goes through this in detail. There's also the online help that talks about the understanding the formulas for Matboard. But when you're starting out with FrameReady and you're thinking, oh, I've got these old pricing structures that I want to use, you may have been working through a paper structure that had a chart that said the types of Matboard and you were pricing them out that way. The downside on that is that some of the mats, these are all 8-ply mats, 32 by 40, and you can see the price range in them is quite extensive. So that one price that you had may not be suitable for all of those different costs. So another thing that people would do is that they would use a cost range. And sometimes these cost ranges were quite wide apart because you didn't want to have a paper with 27 different layers going down with all these different cost ranges on there. The downside on that is that, it may not cover the cost of a $25 mat until you get higher up on the larger sizes. So one price fits all, even though it's for a small group here, doesn't necessarily work as well as a computer that's going to be able to say the exact cost is this, we're marking it up this much, and you've got your retail price. There is actually a webinar also online called Evolution of Pricing that you can see, and how people move up in their progression of how they start. So this method that we're going to be looking at is the cost times a markup, and then also we can do plus a retail price as well. And when we start looking at the markups, a lot of people think that if I have a sliding scale markup, I may not be making as much money on the items that don't have as high a markup. And the truth is that if it's a higher priced item, you are still going to be making a substantial profit on it, even though the markup is lower. than some of the less expensive items. And the question is, how do you choose your markup? And if you do take a look at that video, it's going to go into a little bit more detail than we're going to do here. But if you take a look at this chart, this is a $17 mat with different various markups. And if we look at a sliding scale chart here, a graph, basically, it's going to say if you did have an 11 times markup, that gold bar is going up very high on the right-hand side, but it doesn't do very much on the small sizes for the 8 by 10 or the 5 by 6 or 9 by 12. So it's showing you that the incline that you have, and this is my teeter-totter that I like to talk about, is going to be fairly level on a lower markup, but on a higher markup, it's going to be really steep and go up very quickly. So the formula that Vivian Kistler and Bob Mayfield came up with was cost times markup plus a set price. And that is that we can have that incline we want, but then use the set price as a fulcrum to increase all of the costs evenly. And that is the cost times markup plus set price. And we're going to take a look at that. The other equation that we have in FrameReady is using that set price is what we have done is say, take the cost of the mat and divide it in half. The customer is going to pay for half of the cost of the mat board. And then whatever area that's being used, that's the area that's being marked up. Not the entire cost of the mat board, but the area. And those two things combined, the area that they're using times the markup, plus half of the wholesale cost of the mat board as the set price, gives us the retail price for the customer. And just a little note that if you are receiving discounts from your supplier, you don't want to give them blindly to your customer. If you're going to give them a discount on the order, you're going to do that where they can see it, but don't give your discount that you've earned from purchasing wisely blindly to your customers. So that's a great handout that you can take a look at. It's the Matboard Pricing PDF that is in the downloads. Going back into the Matboard Pricing, where's the pricing located? It's located on the left-hand side in the group called Matboard. And when you click on Matboard, it's going to find all of the records that you have, all the Matboard records, and you can be either in the form view where you see the details of one record, or you can be in the list view where you're going to see all of your Matboard records. And of course, on the left-hand side is the ID number for them to identify them. We have the wholesale cost in the middle, the dimensions, whether it's a 32 by 40 or a 40 by 60. And over on the right-hand side, we can see whether it's current or if it's not verified. And if it is not verified, we believe that it's discontinued. You can change that to say that it's discontinued if you want. You can find all the not verifieds and change them globally to flag them as discontinued, or you can leave them as they are. It's your choice. But it does give you the date and when it was last active on that. So that's just a little brief overview of this screen. We're going to move on and start talking about the markups. If we go back to that list view, I've got a few selected items here. So I'm going to go find my marked records, and I have a mat on here that I want to take a look at. It's the Artique one. So I'm going to sort them out alphabetically, clicking on the word item, and I'm going to go to that digital white Artique, which is a very popular mat right now. If we take a look at the item number, we've got the cost of the item, the dimensions that we have here. And what I've done is I've simplified it down so that we just have a markup in there right now. And if I go to the right-hand side, I'm going to click on the dark blue tab for Matboard Pricing. And just right above that, I want to point out that it says we're pricing by United Inch Area. And that's defined by the circle that's over here on the right-hand side. So you can see that it changes as I change the radio circle to identify the type of pricing that I want to use. So I'm using United Inch Area here, and when I look over to the left, it has a sliding scale for markups. One of the things that we've done on our newer markups is that we've increased the amount, because if you look down here, it used to stop at around $44, $46, but we now have mat boards that go up to $200. So we want to put that range in available. So I did put the markup a little bit lower on these, because in some cases you may think it might be hard to get a 3 times markup on a $150 mat. And if you're wondering about the cost range of the mats, you can click on the mats on the left-hand side, which has just found all of them for me. And now if I go to the list view, I can sort them out by cost. And in the case that I did, I actually did a find for all of the mats that are 32 by 40 in size, rather than all of them And I also said, I just want to take a look at the current mats, not all of them. And looking at this list, I can click on the underlined word cost. The yellow arrow at the top takes me to my least expensive mat, so that I would kind of ignore some of the ones on the low end there. You know, even if we said that we were starting out at, you know, $7, if I go down to the bottom of the list, this is where I can find my most expensive, and that's a palette, so I'm going to ignore that. But my most expensive mat that I have in this database is $314. And that's for a 32 by 40 mat. So you can see the need that we want to have those markups go down a little bit more for these mats. I'm going to go back to my found set and looking for that Artique mat. Let's go back and take a look at it. So we know that the markups are going in a sliding scale, and reading this is telling me that this is the word case. If this is the case, then what I want to do is I want to take the cost on the left-hand side of the screen, and if the cost is less than $6, which it isn't, then I would have a markup of 4. So it continues on down this sliding scale, looking to see at 860. It's more than 6, it's more than 8, but it's less than 10. Therefore, it's going to use this line on that sliding scale. You can, if you want, you know, erase this and just put a single markup item in here. And in fact, I'll do that. I'm just going to change that and say, I just want to do a 4 times markup on all of my mats. And you can decide that you can do that if you want. You don't have to use what's in here, but you can if you want to. If you are playing with the markups and you get to the point where you're thinking, I don't know if I should have done that, you can click on the Lookup My Default, and it's going to put your default in automatically. Now this one is already marked as an InStock and says it shouldn't be, so I'm going to say yes, go ahead and apply the default to it. And I'll explain the InStock in just a moment. So here's my sliding scale for my markups. And if you're wondering about how to read the markups, this formula that we have in here, there's a handout that you can take a look at. And that handout is called, there's Formulas PDF, and it talks about all the different ways that you can put something in. You could do an arbitrary price. We've got our cost times 5. Really simple way to do things. If you decided that you wanted to round off to the nearest 2 digits or 3 digits, you can do that. So when you're looking at this formula writer, it tells you what it does for you at the top, how it looks, the description of it, and then how to read it on the right-hand side. And the one that we're looking right now at is this one where it says cost, and it's got a sliding scale below it. So it says if this is the case, and in this case it's looking at molding, if the chop is greater than 0, and then, and that's what the semicolon means in the middle, take the amount of the chop field, which is right over on the left, and multiply it by the number 3. So this screen, this handout that we've got has a lot of information on it with a lot of different formulas that you can use. You can evaluate, decide, you know, is this something I want to do? You can create your own. And the hope is that you will create your own, and the markups and the pricing is going to be specific to your shop, not necessarily the default one that's in FrameReady. Take a look next at the set price, because if I'm looking at the straight markup and all I've used is a markup, you'll take a look on the right-hand side and you'll notice that a 5x7 mat is less than $1. And the smaller sizes are practically being given away. I'm going to have to do a 16 by 20, and even then I have not covered the cost of the mat, and you should have. So I'm going to add in the set price. And the set price that we usually use is using that formula called round, where we round it off to the nearest dime. We're going to take the cost and divide it by 2 and round it off to the nearest dime. That's the 1. And now once I've done that, it's going to calculate out what the set price is based on whatever the cost of the mat is. If this mat cost $18, okay, and I'm going to add in 18 there, you'll see that the set price increases. So as the cost of the mat increases, the set price will increase as well. Okay, that means that you don't have to do anything with this part of the formula. It's automatically going to keep updating as you update your vendors. It's going to keep changing the markup up to the next bracket. It's going to keep updating the set price for you as well. Now, the third part of our equation is the minimum price, because again, looking over on the right-hand side, the smaller sizes do look better in price. They do have more substantial amount because it's half of the wholesale cost. But again, if this was Aztec orange or Congo green, I may not use this mat again, and I've ordered the whole mat in for a 9x12 or an 11x14, and I haven't even covered the cost of the mat. So that's where the min price comes into effect. And usually what we'll do is we'll put the word cost in here so that it covers the cost of the mat. But that means that hasn't covered your cost or the amount that you have invested into this piece, that you have to cut it, you have to order it, you have to receive it, all the other work that you have to do. So we want to add in a little bit extra. And even if it's anywhere $2, $3, $4, $5, you can see now the minimum price here is a floating amount and it will never go below that number. So it continues to float up until it reaches the amount where it would have been below it, and it starts to go above and it stops. So there's the markup, set price, and minimum price used in conjunction together to create a good solid pricing structure for you. And it's fine that you can use one record to test, and I would recommend that you use a record in your price codes file to test rather than going back to the work order and saying, I want to put a size in and I want to know how much it is. The price sampler on the right-hand side will do that for you. And here's the tip. Rather than going back to the work order, you can click on Show More Details, because if the size that you're looking for isn't in here, I'm looking for a 9.5 by 20, then I can click on Show More Details, go in, use the first record, that's fine, 9, 20, and I actually said 9.5, and you have to use decimals in this section. So if I said 9.5 by 20, what would the retail price be? And it's going to be the minimum because that's the basic minimum. So let's go for a 20 by 20, get something over that minimum, and you can see that the price increases. So you can use this to figure out how much are you going to be charging for a specific size, and then you can go right back to this equation and the formula to say, okay, I need to make a change here. And then you can change it or leave it as it is if it's correct. That number is still in there. If I want to remove that number, I'm just going to click the reset, and it puts in all the default sizes for me once again. So that's the way to test your pricing. The pricing now is on one record. If I've made any changes and I want to keep it, what I want to do then is I want to go up to the pricing options and defaults, because this is where the default is stored. And if I use the button over here on the right-hand side and applied it to all the Matboard records in this database, that's okay for the existing ones. But the problem arises when you import new Matboards. They are still going to be using the old function of the default that you had in there. They're not using the new one that you've created. So if on this one I've changed this to 5 for some reason, or I've changed anything else in here, I want to go back to the pricing options and defaults and make sure that I've made that same change in my default. And now I'm going to apply it to my group. Okay, I'm going to just go back and put that back to our standard one. The other thing that I can do is on this record, if I have made a series of changes that I want this to be cost, and I want the minimum to be 10, whatever the changes that I've made, I can hold my mouse over top of the frame options and defaults button, press down on the shift key, and create that brand new record right down here at the bottom. So there's my 5, my cost, my 10, and I can say this is now going to be my default, not necessarily just for the 32 by 40s. So if it isn't just for those, I'll take that out. It's for all sizes, but maybe it is just for Larson Jewel. So I can leave that in there and then apply it to group, but all new Matboard coming in is going to use this pricing as well. If there's something in here that you don't need, go ahead and click the delete button, and that's going to remove it. If you want to learn more about this, we have a video called Pricing Options and Defaults. You can watch that on how to use this screen to its best advantage. And I'm going to ask Chrissy if there's an opportunity for us to take a poll right now.
All right, yes, I have our first poll, so I'm going to launch that for you.
Okay.
When you first received FrameReady, which pricing did you want to set up first? Molding, Matboard, glass, mounting, or other?
And right after this, I'm going to talk about getting things to match a paper chart, or if you had an existing chart that you.
Okay, I'm going to close the poll and share the results.
Really interesting. Okay, yeah, molding was the key one, and then labor, printing, other items were the next. That's excellent. Interesting, really interesting. Thank you everyone for sharing that information. Wonderful. So I'm going to go back into FrameReady, and another thing that you can do is if you find that you like the structure in here, but it isn't suitable for your market, it's not going to be the same for everybody who's on the East Coast or the West Coast. This is default pricing that we have set up in here based on some standards, but East Coast versus West Coast, even if you're in the same city, you may be in a high-end neighborhood where somebody else is in a discount area, and you may have different overhead costs, so you want to include them. If you like the pricing structure that's in here and you decide I want to increase it or decrease it, you can test it out before you do that by going right in here and saying I need to decrease this. So I'm going to decrease it and multiply all the markups in here, reducing them 10%. And so 10 minus 100 is 90.90. And when I click up here, you'll see that it reduced the markup. And I can put that onto each one of these going across. Or if you wanted to increase it 10%, then I'm going to multiply it by itself plus 10%. And now the markup went up 10% from where it was. If you want to do this globally for all of your Matboard and you don't want to do this, I'm going to put my default back in. Yep. Okay, and I put the default back in. And if you want to do it globally for all of your Matboard, then what you can do is go up to the top of the screen, click on the Perform button, and click on Adjust Pricing by a Percentage. When you click on that button, what it does is it gives you the option to say, I want to increase everything by 10%. Or 2%, I want to do a 2% increase on the pricing this year or to get started. And then I want to say that that's going to be applied to all Matboard. And then all I need to do is click the Proceed button, and it's going to go through all of my records, my 2,000 plus records in the Matboard, and add that percentage on there. The other great thing that it does is that it adds on a special date as well. And if I do that just for this one record, just for this current record to show you what it's going to look like, I'll do an increase for 20%, and now it's added in that little message saying this is when you did the price increase. So when you come back to this screen and you think, gee, it's been a while since I've looked at my pricing, I haven't made any changes in several years, and you do want to look at it once a year, take a look at this and go ahead and evaluate your pricing and increase it. The other thing I mentioned was this InStock down here at the bottom. In your pricing options and defaults, if you have a special mat that maybe is your go-to mat and you don't want to have this minimum price attached to it because it's a mat that you use on an ongoing basis, then you can say that it's an in-stock mat. I don't want it to be updated when I apply all of the group pricing to it. So in that case, that's why you've seen if I've got this in here and I say this is not going to have a minimum because it's my go-to white mat, then if I did click on the lookup, that's why it's giving me this message saying this is a special in-stock mat. Are you sure you want to apply the default formula to it? And if you have made a lot of changes to it, you can say yes. Okay, and then just go ahead and take out the min price again, or you can say no, I want to keep it as it is. Okay, so that's the in-stock option that you have available. Now, going to that price chart, and I did show that in one of the handouts here, that if we had the Matboard pricing and people had a pricing chart where they wanted to match their pricing, and you've got something that exists, it's working for you, you don't want to change it, that's okay, you can do that. And here are the ways that you can do it. So if you're taking a look at this price range, I caution you that you cannot necessarily make, or you wouldn't necessarily want to make all of the prices in that one price range the same because it's such a wide price range. That's where the markups come in handy, and you can create multiples of this. But if you do want to get something close, pick a number that's in the middle there. So we're going to look at something that's in the $13 mark on this particular one. And what we want to do is we want to try and match the pricing on it. So if I was to go and find that mat, and I did that already for us, so I can, and then I also mark the box that we have this mat sample. And that's a great handy one so that if the mat becomes discontinued, you know exactly which mats need to be pulled. And you can easily find them. So this one is in the $13 mark. You know, so we want to say that the FrameReady pricing is too high for what's in there. So I would go in and let's take out the set price, take out the minimum price, and when you're evaluating your pricing and trying to work with it, start with the markup. And take a look at your price chart and say, for the $32 price, I wanted it to be $28. So what is the markup that I need to have for this range, which is at the 14? So if I was to do a 2 times markup on that, how would that look? And in this case, it's about really pretty close. It's at $27 on this. So we're in the ballpark here. Now, that's good. Stay with that, because when you look at the smaller sizes, now we can see that the smaller sizes are actually way too low, because we know that we want to at least have $17 for the the 18 United inch price. So that means I need to come back to the set price and add a dollar value in there. Now, when I add the dollar value in to raise the smaller sizes, and you can see it came up to $16.69, that has also affected the larger size. So now I'm going to go back again to that, and I'm going to reduce the markup. And it's a little bit of back and forth where you're going to take a look at the amounts to say, is it still too high? Where do I want to be with this? And you're going to go back and forth between them. And this is not recommended pricing by any means, but this is just to show as an example. I've got my $28 here. I've got my 15 up here, so I'm going to increase it again a little bit more. I might use a minimum price to say it shouldn't go below that dollar amount, and I'm going to hold it at that. So once you've got your formula exactly the way you want, that's when you're going to add it to the pricing options and defaults. If you're doing this for other price ranges, okay, recognize that if we're applying this to this price range, the other ones that are below it are going to be a little bit less. The ones that are more expensive mats are going to be a little bit higher. They're not going to be at your exact amount. The other thing you want to do is go in through this chart, and let's say that this turned out to be maybe 2.8. Okay, then you can go ahead and change these other numbers, and you want to keep them going in that small increments on the right hand side for the markup, because what will happen is if they don't go in the small increments, and I'm going to say, let's say that this was a 4.8 is the markup that we wanted on here. And we've got our retail price. And you can see for the 32 by 40, we're retailing at $79 now. The minute that a piece would go above this, and I've got the price saved in there. So at the $14 mark, we'll say $13.99. Okay, showing the markup here. The retail price is $82.99. If it goes above that, okay, $14.01, instead of $82.99, the prices drop down to $68. And the reason for that is because there's such a big gap in the price, the markups. All right, when there's a big gap in the markups and your cost goes up, your retail price goes down. So putting my defaults back in, I want to have small increments in between them going up in even stages so that my retail price doesn't drop. Another option for you, if you have a price chart on anything, maybe Supplier's given you a wholesale cost chart for plaque mounting or something else. You can have any of those to fit into FrameReady. The same thing with a Matboard. And what you can do is you can create a code table for it. So if I was to go over to the left-hand side of the screen, and now I'm going to look at the code tables, and on the code tables, I'm going to go to one that I have created already, MB01, and that's from my old pricing chart that I had over here. So there's my old price chart that I have, and I created it to match exactly with the 18 United inches, 21 United inches, matching the sizes that I had on my old chart, and then just typing in the price into the price field for each one of these. Once you have one of these created, then all you need to do is click on the duplicate table button, and you can duplicate the table and increase the prices. If you're creating a price chart that has a small number on this side and it's just United inch, when you create your new chart, I would use a blank chart rather than selecting to every 2 United inches, unless your price chart has that on there, or every 6 United inches, or if it's based on XY sizes, you can do that as well. But once you've created the blank chart and you're going to give it a name, here's my tip, make it a short name. Okay, nothing too long. It's just a code that you're actually using to create this. And if the code name is already in use, it will tell you. And then all you need to do is type in the amount and then put in your dollar value that you need and go to the next size. And as I said, once you have one of these created, all you need to do is click on the duplicate table button in the top right hand corner, select the table that you want, that you're going to use. So there's my MB02, and I'm going to use this to create MB04, duplicate. It has the old prices in there, but now I can go back to my chart here, and this one should be $20.16, and I can go in and type those prices in, update them, and that's done. Now, to apply this to using a code table to all of your Matboard from your old pricing chart, you want to put into the pricing options and defaults. So you don't have to go to each piece and say this is in this range and this is in that range. In the pricing options and defaults, I've started one down here, and this is the column I'm going to use because it's in the code table. And it isn't just one code table that I want to use. I want to use a range of code tables. When you click in the code table field, it gives you a pop-up list of all of the codes that are currently in there. You can click back into the box and start typing, and that's what I did. So I typed in the word case and said, if this is the case, that the cost is less than $9.25, and that's based on that price chart that I created over here from my old pricing chart that I had, and this went up to $9.24, so this needs to say anything less than $9.25. And that's how I did that. And it's going to use code table MB01, and you can write on your price chart, you know, what the name of the code table was that you had. I would caution, don't use just numbers, don't use just letters. It's a good idea to have this Matboard 01, Matboard 02. And once you've done that, you can click apply to group, and it's going to apply to all of them. And if this is my default for Matboard, I'm going to select this now, and then apply it, but I also need to go back up here and say this is no longer going to be used. You don't want to have two defaults in your program that are both for every supplier in your database. So you should only have one that's in use. You can have other ones that are for Matboard, a default for Matboard, if it's specifically for another supplier. And every time that you make changes, be sure to come back in and make notes of it. When you created it, what did you do? I increased the markup range to $200. I added on the cost plus 5 for the minimum price. I did a percentage increase of a total of 5% over different time periods. So that information is very valuable to you when you decide that you want to go back and take a look at other pricing structures. Now, we've taken a look at Matboard. We need to take a quick look at molding. And here's the thing for molding. The very first thing that I would do is come in here and take a look at this button here, apply order type to group. Because when you imported your molding, you would have selected hopefully what type you wanted, how you wanted to price it, but you may not have been able to say everything from License Jewel came in as length, and I don't want it to be length. So I'm going to click on this button here, apply order type to group in the molding records. All right, and it gives me this screen here, and I'm just going to minimize that one, get rid of it. And on this screen, what I'm looking at specifically is if I want everything to be length, I click on this button, or everything in my whole database is chop, I click on one button, and it does it for me. But if I've got certain suppliers, and I say that everything from a selected supplier is going to be chop, but only for the metal items, or only because I can't cut the metals, or it's only for wood, or I don't like cutting the plastics, the polystyrene, so it's only for those. So you can select just that group and apply it to only that group, and it will apply it so that you don't have to go back and forth. Now, in Canada, we don't always have a chop and a join price for all of our suppliers. Some of them do, but if they don't, and you've selected chop, for all of your wood frames from a specific supplier, and they don't have a chop price, then it will not mark that circle for you. So we'll have to give you the instructions on how to do that. We'll post that on our online help, how you can go in and use the replace command, and that's what you'll be looking for to replace it. And what it's going to do, of course, is change all of these so that you don't have to. And if you take a look at the list view, you can see that all of these are marked as length. If I had clicked the apply button, it would have gone through, found that group, and changed them. So, and here's one. The other option is that you can go to any specific item that you want and change it to be a different cost type as well. Now, when you're pricing out your cost types, that's where the formula is going to say that you want to price a certain cost type a certain way. And the let formula lets us use these words so that if I've selected the length price down at the bottom, that's this circle down here. I've selected length price, then I want to price by length. And that's going to be a 5 times markup, which you can see over on the left-hand side. But if I want to price by chop, then I'm going to change the circle down here at the bottom to chop. And now it's using the chop markup and giving me the retail price based on chop times that markup. Here's the join price. There is no join wholesale cost. So if I've clicked on join, what it does is it evaluates it to say, my first option is join, but if there isn't anything in join, it's going to go to chop. If there isn't anything in chop, it's going to go to cost. And that's how it's evaluating it. That's the portion down here at the bottom where it says, do not modify this section. And down here at the bottom, that's where it's saying this, if, I've selected join, look in the join first, then go to chop, then go to cost. If you wanted to reverse these, you could. Not a problem. But this is the basic markup. This is a flat markup. It's not a sliding scale. And the reason that we don't use a sliding scale specifically on this type of molding is because the range is so small. I did a search earlier for the cost on the metal frames, and it was ranging from $1.37 to $7.93. But if I did the same thing for the wood frames, it goes from $1 all the way up to $56. So you can see there's a much higher cost range that we need to cover. So that's why it's okay to do a straight markup on the metal frames, but for the wood frames, we want to do a range. And Chrissy, I'm going to let you go ahead and run that other poll before I finish up with some of the other information that we have.
Okay, sounds good. And I just want to apologize. I kind of left you with the only video running. My eyes are really bothering me, so I didn't want people to think I was giving them dirty looks.
Oh, no, that's all right. Chrissy just had eye surgery, so I'm so grateful that she's with us today.
Okay, so I'm going to launch the poll, and the question is, when you set up your pricing, did you make changes to it?
Oh yeah, so the first one is yes, it was time for a price increase. Second is yes, I made a few changes here and there. I don't remember what I did. No, I kept my pricing as it was before using FrameReady, or no, I used the FrameReady demo defaults.
Thank you.
And there are no right or wrong answers. We're just curious to find out what people have been doing in the past. And it may be that you started out with the defaults and then later on you changed them as you became more familiar with the pricing. And that's quite possible.
Close the poll and share the results.
Excellent. Okay, so yeah, I used the FrameReady defaults. Yeah, okay, and made a few changes here and there. All right, excellent. Okay, great to see nobody said that they don't remember. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that information. That's great. So I want to go back in here and installing the program defaults. There's a button on both the Matboard screen and on the molding screen, and it's called installing the program defaults. So that if you decided that you were going to change something on here, or you got to this screen and somebody else has changed it for you, let's do cost times 2. Okay, and that's what was in here, and you're thinking, I want to know what the defaults are. You could click on this button to install the program defaults. It's not going to do anything right away, so you're safe. And you can say, I just want to check it on this one record to see what the defaults are. And then you can compare them. If these are the defaults here, you can go to your pricing options and defaults in here and say, is that the same? 2.5, 3.52. That's what I'm currently using right now. And if I go back here, are those the same numbers? And yes, they are. So that's a way for you to be able to compare. The other thing that you can do is if you have your own pricing chart and you're thinking, I have an idea of where I want my price ranges to be, usually what I would do is use several key sizes using an 18 United inch 8 by 10, 16 by 20 at 36 United inches, 24 by 30 at 54, and 32 by 40 at 72 United inches. And those are the sizes that I look at so that if I am changing my markups, and I want to see how close they are, those are the key sizes that I'm looking at. Rather than looking at every single individual one, or if you have a size that is your size that you use all the time because you do a lot of posters, you do 22 by 28, and you want to look at that size, go ahead, but pick another size as well, so that it's not just one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum. You want to get that range in there when you're testing your pricing. So again, we have a formula in here. We have a set price. Set price is usually set at 5, and I'm going to go to the molding for wood now because I want to take a look at the difference in between those two formulas, because we do have some variation in that. So if I'm looking at the metal one here, and let me just do this, find all of the molding records, okay, that I have marked. And there we go, nice short range there. So we've got the one here specifically that is a metal frame. I've got one that's a fillet, one that's a wood frame, and I've got this one here that is pricing for the Canadian market, and I'll just take a look at that. It's got a code table so that in the Canadian market, if you are using one of the vendor supplied matrices and you want to price that way, I would strongly suggest that if you are pricing by join. If you're ordering by join, you need to do that because there is no joint wholesale cost and the cost varies. Watch the Pricing Molding in Canada video to get the details on that. But if you check this box, now you're going to see that the prices for this are based on the matrix. If you want to apply it to everything in your database, click on this button, or just one supplier. You can do that as well. If we go back to the one that's specifically for molding, taking a look at the formula here, we have a sliding scale as it goes down the sliding scale. I'm just going to take my little bit of an extra off there for the moment. We also have something in here called a minimum, and the minimum says that it will never go below join times 2. So if my markup is really low and my join times 2 is going to be, actually this amount, then it's not going to price based on the length markup that I have. But if my markup is higher, there we go, then it will change the footage. But this is a safety net for us that we put in, saying that, you shouldn't be charging less than, the company is. If they join it and they have somebody working in their warehouse, why would you be paid less to do that than they were? So join times 2 minimum, unless if it's a discount or you've got, this is a special molding that you keep in stock, you can do that as well. And what I did was I put 2 slash marks in there to say I don't want to use that on this record. And now if I go back to my regular markups that I had in here, then it will go down below the join times 2 amount. So it will price it lower. So that's one of those things that you can do with the markups, okay? This also has the case that if I've got a sliding scale based on length pricing, okay? I also have a sliding scale based on my chop pricing. And if you wanted to create a sliding scale for your join pricing, you can do that as well. Down here at the bottom, we have the set price. We've got a special line in here saying that if the group, which is over on the left-hand side, is fillet, then it will charge $7.50 instead of the 5. And if I go to the previous record and look at that, that's where it is a fillet. You can see that it's $7.50. But going to the wood frame, it's only charging 5. And this one formula in here does all of that for us. The other thing you can do is that if you need to add on some shipping fees for a specific supplier, you can add that in as well. And now it's added that additional $16 to this. And you can do that specifically for one supplier. Going over to the minimums, some suppliers will have a 6 or 4 foot minimum for you that you can add on there. Again, test everything out on one record. Once you've got it in here, go ahead and add it to the pricing options and defaults by pressing down on the shift key on your keyboard and clicking once on the button up here. So that if I did add in that this is a 6 foot minimum, and if they send me something over 10 feet, there's going to be a 10% shipping charge. This is specifically for the width multiplier. some of the companies, when they're calculating out the footage of how much molding you need for a chop or a join, their charts add in a little bit of extra waste. And this is a way that you can do that. And that's the number that we usually put in for Larson Jewell. If you have a double chop miter saw, you may want to do that as well. What it does is it takes the width of the molding, multiplies it by that number, and gives you just that little bit of extra space that you need. You can also have a shipping code that you want to add in here saying this is going to be specific to this company. And if they've given you the code, you can add that in saying anything less than 48 United inches, and I'm adding it in to charge that extra price on there. Once I've got all of this set up, press down on the Shift key, click once on the pricing options and defaults, and now my formula specific to me has been added in here and created with all of my variables. Now, it didn't add in the ship code. That is something that I'm working on, so do double check that to make sure that it puts your shipping code in there as well. You can click the default to say, yes, this is specifically for all of my molding from Larson Jewell. And then you can click the apply button. Put your date saying that it was created today, and then you've got that added in as well. Okay, so we've got lots of different options for you to put the pricing in there. One of the other things that I set up specifically on here for us to test was when something goes wrong with your pricing. If you're missing a little bit of the formula, you will get question marks over on the right-hand side. If you're wondering what's wrong, you can go through looking for those little semicolons. You can click on the Enlarge button to see more of it all at once, and sometimes they just pop right out at you what's missing. If not, send it to us. Let us know that you're missing something, and then we'll be happy to take a look at it for you. The other thing that happens is sometimes when you do have a formula that's missing, when you open up your program, it's the same as if you click on the word perform and check markup integrity. You open up your program and you get a message that says there are so many records that are missing a markup. We don't want you to give anything away for free. And if it means that these items are not being priced accurately and there isn't a retail price coming up, then we want to fix them. Easiest way for you to fix them is to click the OK button. And if there's anything that's wrong, it'll check your default formula and apply it. And it said these two have now been fixed. Okay, they're good to go. However, that other one isn't good. So we're going to go back, click on perform, to check markup integrity again, and now I see that it still keeps coming up with this one record. So I'm going to say cancel and say what's happening here. Well, it's a blank record. Okay, it was created by accident, and I wrote that in there. People probably won't write that in there, but I wanted to make sure I could find it. It's created by accident. You don't need it. Go down to the bottom left-hand corner, click on the delete record button, and remove it. And that way you can keep your database nice and clean. There's no records present because I deleted that one. If I go back to molding, I can go back, click perform, check markup integrity, and it's going to give me, oh, there's still one record that's missing. Click cancel, and now we can go back and take a look at that piece and find out what it is. There is no cost for the item. That's the other one that should have been fixed. A lot of times if there's no cost or the item number is missing, that's why you're going to get a problem. This is one of my records that I was playing with earlier, so it needed a cost in there. And once the cost is entered in, it's going to be okay. So that's a basic overview of all the pricing structures in FrameReady and how you can set your FrameReady program up to price the way that you want to. Check out our videos on basic molding pricing and also pricing molding in Canada to see more details about how you can set up molding and matboard pricing. Great, and I don't believe there are any questions, so.
No questions.
No, that's great. So I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us today. We will look forward to seeing you again at the next webinar. Bye.
October 1st. Bye.
Bye.